Leader of the third party.
It's going to be different.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. There's times when I try to describe to people what it's like to be in this chamber and how it feels like we're in a reality that doesn't exist outside of this building. And today is that experience. Yesterday, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a report on the worsening climate crisis. The report clearly states that any further delay in concerted global action will miss a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called the report, quote, an atlas of human suffering and a damning indictment of the failed climate leadership. And we are arguing about which party is more supportive of liquefied natural gas based on fracking in this chamber today. As though somehow we could export natural gas to Europe. The logistical fallacies aside, building more emission-intensive fossil fuel development, which is hazardous to human health and exacerbates the climate crisis, cannot be seen as an answer in 2022. It will not, intensifying climate change will not address the current war in Europe. If anything, it will exacerbate global conflict. We've seen it in BC and around the world this year. Climate disasters displace thousands of people, destroy communities, and diminish food and water security. Through you, Honourable Speaker, to the Premier, we've had fires, flood, deadly heat dome. We've spent billions repairing damaged infrastructure, and yet we do not see the political will to treat climate change like the existential threat that it is. In light of the IPCC report, how can this Premier continue to advocate for an increase to our emissions after the climate disasters of 2021?
Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and everybody on this side of the House, and I hope everybody on both sides of the House pays heed to not only what British Columbians experienced throughout 2021, but also to what people around the world experienced throughout 2021, and the warnings that we get from scientists about the increasing threats of climate change, the increasing impacts of climate change, the need to prepare and adapt to what we are experiencing and what we know we will experience more of, and also, Honourable Speaker, to invest significantly in a broad range of programs to reduce emissions through every part of our economy, through our homes, through our buildings, through our communities, and through our transportation systems. And that, Honourable Speaker, is exactly what we are continuing to do, not just in this budget, but in 3 budgets before this one. This year, we have added $1.2 billion in emission reduction Clean BC programs to the $2.3 billion that we had already invested. On top of that, Honourable Speaker, for climate preparedness, we have budgeted $2.1 billion to protect people from climate disasters and to build back better, including $83 million in a climate preparedness and adaptation strategy to ensure that we have the information and data that we need to protect British Columbians. This, Honourable Speaker, is not an easy task either on the mitigation or the preparedness side. It is multi-leveled, it is across government, it's through every ministry. There are literally dozens of programs, and it will involve everyone, and we're committed to continue that work.
Leader of third party, supplemental.
It's fascinating, Honourable Speaker, the position of these 2 ministers on the benches, because they are advocating for the opposite. On the one hand, billions spent to try to reduce the effects of climate change, and on the other hand, billions poured in public money and subsidies to keep building those emissions.
Ramp up production.
This is a contradiction that this government has not reconciled.
Oh, ramp it up.
And continues to pretend that words are enough, that facts and data and evidence don't matter. The thing that we're leading in BC is our rising emissions year over year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Svitlana Krakovska, who headed Ukraine's delegation to the UN, said yesterday that, quote, human-induced climate change and the war on Ukraine have the same roots, fossil fuels and their dependence on them. It is, I'm sure, Honourable Speaker, you can recognize an understatement to say that I am disappointed by the discourse in this chamber. Climate delay, pretending that we can continue to build fossil fuel infrastructure and call ourselves climate leaders, that is the new climate change denial. Mm-hmm. We are out of time. The IPCC report is clear. Framing increased fossil fuel development as an answer to war is something that I could not have imagined would be happening in this chamber in this year. And yet here we are. Through you, Honourable Speaker, again to the Premier. How does he square claiming to act on the climate crisis while advocating and subsidizing the single largest source of climate emissions in BC history, which relies on a massive increase of methane-intensive fracking in the Northeast?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And I'll simply repeat. We have developed on this side of the House a multifaceted emission reduction climate action plan, which the member knows because the member and her former colleague in the Green Party, Andrew Weaver, and her current colleague were very much a part of designing that program. But, Honourable Speaker, to assume that the answer to climate change is as easy as flicking a light switch is neither correct nor doable. We all know that we are in a transition. We all know that over time we are transitioning to clean energy, renewable energy, and we need to do that as quickly as possible. In the meantime, Honourable Speaker, I will simply repeat, we have invested heavily in Clean BC. We have a range of measures, including investing in active transportation, including setting standards for zero-carbon buildings, including putting a cap on natural gas utilities, including a commitment to work with industry, Indigenous people, and experts to reduce emissions from oil and gas by 33% by 2030. These are targets, these are commitments, these are statements. That's what our government is working on, and that's what we'll continue to work on, because we know we have a responsibility to British Columbians, and we know we have a responsibility to work with other jurisdictions around the world to take action as quickly as possible. We all need to do that, not just in this government or in this House or in this province, but globally.